Hello everyone and welcome to Yarkshire Gamer, one of my fairly rare painting tutorials. Something a bit different today. Most of you will know Yarkshire Gamer for 28mm, and a little project that is going to be the next big thing here is 15mm moderns, Arab-Israeli 1985-ish, based on the background in the Oil War book for Team Yankee. Talk about Team Yankee in other videos. I'm not 100% sure about the rules at the moment. I'm going to try it with a different activation system, but that's for another day. At this moment in time, we're looking at these figures, and these are 15mm Israelis, and I'm just going to go through my methods of painting these guys up, and hopefully it'll be some use to you. So here's the figures that we're starting off with. As you can see, I've already glued them to the base that they come with in the box when you buy them, and I've sprayed them all black. So rather than use a holding device, or I use little whiskey stones with blue tack on top to hold my figures when I'm painting with them, I might as well just use this base as my thing to hold. So there we go with that. And first colour I'm going to use is this yellow olive 70892. I'm just going to use this to block in the base colours on the figures. So you'll note the distinct lack of wet palette, because I think they're a waste of time, but there we go. I'll block these in and then I'll come back to you in a second. So there we have it. I've just blocked in the colours. I'm using, or going to use, the black as a bit of a help with the shade on these figures, but I've not been ultra neat with these. I don't mind a bit of run over into other areas that are going to get painted, because if you haven't watched one of my painting videos before, I'm fairly sloppy compared to many of these other people, you know, the wet palette brigade. I'm trying to get these out and done in a reasonably quick time to a good standard, and a bit of block painting there, and look, me paint on there is still wet, so oh magic, I could still use that. Oh dear, I don't have to buy a wet palette yet. Sorry, I'm just teasing you. So all I've done with this is I've used the olive green to paint the main parts of the uniform, and I've used it on the M72 Law as well, just to give that a green. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some my favourite colour, one of my favourite colours, desert yellow. And with this, I'm just going to do a little bit of dry brushing. So a little bit on my super duper 12.99 from Warlord Games, old bit of MDF for mixing your paints on. And all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to look at that brush. Dry brushing, old knackered brushes, that's all you need. You don't need to buy dry brushing brushes. Some of the ones I've seen are the size of a small county. They're just absolutely massive. Your dry brushing brush should represent the size of the things that you want to dry brush. So if you're dry brushing 15mm, you don't need much bigger than that. So I'm just going to make a little quick and dirty mix on the side there of a 50-50 yellow and green, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the brush down from top to bottom on these figures, just picking out the highlight on the figures. I'm not bothered whether I'm getting other bits of the figure. That's why the order that you paint your figures in is extremely important for me with this method. Other people will do things in different ways. If I'd spent 20 minutes painting the face, then I can't do this because this is a messy technique and this is going to go over other bits of the figure. So there we go, that'll do. I've just added a little layer, a little highlight layer there on that uniform. The Israeli uniform obviously get dusty, and if you look at real life pictures of it, it fades very quickly from this olive yellow, olive green colour. So there we go, that's the second stage. Now we've done that, we've got most of our messy stuff out of the way. There is one more bit of dry brushing to do on these, but we've got some more blocking in to do, so let's come back and do that. So we're just going to block in the rest of the colour areas now, and we're doing grey-green first. And not particularly any major reason why we're doing things in this order now. We're just getting things blocked in. So grey-green, I'm just going to use that for the helmets. And slap it all on. Bing bang bosh. Doesn't matter too much if we get any on faces, etc. What we're concentrating on here is colour or completing the block area. So look, we're a little bit of care taken there to make sure I don't get that all over the law 72. There we go. Looking all right already. So next colour we're going to use is beige brown, and this is so old the numbers come off. I must get myself a wet palette so my paints last longer. Oh dear, stop it, Ken. You're winding people up. All right. Eventually some will come out. There we go. Don't need a lot of paint on your MDF. You've got to remember it dries out on here. So this is beige brown is my base colour for European flesh. And we can argue all day and night about what colour fresh Israeli troops would have, but I'm sticking to my tried and tested method because I know it works. So, care and consideration paid for once to making sure that we just cover the flesh areas, having spent all that massive amount of time getting the uniform right. He says very tongue-in-cheek. We are just blocking the colours in so that we have a coverage on the flesh area. And this is going to form the base colour for our faces, hands, etc. That we, having done... Some people paint faces first, and I've explained why I don't do that, because it restricts the techniques that you can use around that face, having spent ages getting your face right. And I appreciate it does kind of bring the figure to life straight away, but once you've done that, you're then restricted with what you can do around the face, because as you can see, or you've seen from this and previous videos, I'm not bothered about getting a bit of paint in the wrong place. at the start of the process. So there we go. Yeah, you'd probably get away with them on the table as they are, wouldn't you? So we've blocked in those colours. And the next colour I'm going to use for blocking is this khaki grey. I'm just going to use that for the webbing. And same brush all the way through. I'm using a 2 Pro Art Proline, as I always use, number 2. Quite a big brush for me, but this one, this is why I always say to people, go to art shops to get your brushes. This has got a really good point on it. So, and I've been using this for a few weeks now for detail. And with 15mm, you would have thought that a 2 would be miles too big. But a 2 with a good point is the business. So as you can see here, I'm just blocking in the webbing and the equipment. Now you could, if you're an expert in IDF and its uniforms, go in and do all sorts of different colours for different parts of the webbing, and then you could have 10 figures when other people will have 300. It's all about your preferences, of what you're going to do. This is just a guide to how I paint these figures, not a guide to how you should paint these figures. So there we go. There's his webbing blocked in, as you can see there, and I'll come back in a few minutes when I've done the other guys. So there we are. There's our guys blocked in, and just going to use going back to something I did a few minutes ago, back with the desert yellow. And of course, if you're dry brushing, then a wet palette kind of defeats the object, because the wet kind of rules out the dry bit of it. And all I'm going to do here is very carefully, I'm going to just lightly, you see how that's picked that out? Get dry brush the webbing and bits of the webbing. Now this is something that I know it looks like I'm just slapping it on here, and to some extent I am, but that's what 40 years of painting experience gives you. You need to try this technique a few times, and make sure that the amount of paint on your brush is right, and that the technique that you're using is right, because although a little bit of bleed over onto the uniform is not too bad, because you've seen me use this olive green, use this desert yellow mixed with the olive green. It's a little bit of a highlight on the uniform, but it can get a little bit too much if you're not careful. But there we go. I think that for not a lot of work is a fairly decent effect, and this really bright light is affecting the contrast as well. There's quite a bit more contrast on there, looking at it in real life, if you like. So there we go. I'm happy with that. Apologies for the bit of wind there. Too much Diet Coke. Right, so the colours that are on this palette now I have finished with, so I can wipe that horrendous waste of paint there. How will I cope? So we've got a couple of tiny little details to put in. Flat Earth, which is my go-to kind of wood colour, and I really only need a tiny bit of this, because all I'm going to do with this is best seen on the back of the weapon on here, the Gali assault rifle. This area here is a wooden stock where the handhold is. So just a tiny little bit of brown in there, just to kind of indicate where the hand stock is. Oh, I just realised he's got a rifle grenade, which I'm going to need to... Oh, sorry, the camera went out of focus there, as it has tendency to do. But as you can see, very, very tiny bit of detail there. And more tiny detail coming up. I've recently discovered this. I don't use Citadel paints that often, but sometimes they come out with a diamond, like Devlin Mud, and then you use it for years and then they discontinue it and bring out some guff that isn't anything like it. So I'm using this at the moment, Base Iron Warriors, and this is for a very, very dark gunmetal, if you like. Previously I was using this gunmetal grey, but you can see that's considerably darker. And this is what the colour I use to kind of give an impression of a a lot of weapons these days are kind of a blackish plastic, but this just kind of gives an impression of scraped metallic weapon, and I like the look of it. You might not, but I certainly do. And all I'm doing is just picking the highlights of these weapons up. You can kind of just see. I'm not trying to paint everything, which can be a mistake that many people say. Oh, I've got something to paint. I've got to cover it in paint. No, you haven't. You can. This is why you've got a black undercoat. You're just bringing out those highlights. And to be fair, we're nearly finished now. I'll just put some green on top of that rifle grenade that I missed earlier on, and then I'll come back and we'll do some faces. So we're on the downhill slope now. This is my current detail brush, which is Pro Art Series 3 Sable. I don't use Sable that often, but this brush just seems to be the business at the moment. Very fine, very detailed, perfect for using on smaller figures. I did see a post on Twitter from somebody saying that you didn't need to use small brushes for smaller figures. I've no idea where that idea comes from. Yes, you can use a bigger tip. A bigger paintbrush with a better tip, but it's still bigger. And I don't fancy doing what I'm just about to do with that number 2 brush I've been using all along. So paint is beige red, which is always my mid-tone for Flash 70804. All paints of Vallejo, apart from that Citadel one that we spoke about a minute ago. And if you look carefully at these, and we're going to have focusing issues here, I know, so I can apologise already. That seems to be about where we're in focus. So I'm getting a tiny amount of paint on my paintbrush, and develop a system for painting faces, and that's what I've done. Bridge of the nose, top of the eye, and then we miss out where the eye socket is, under the cheek, and then if you're careful enough to leave little gaps in between where the lips would be and where the chin is, that's how you get a good look with your faces. And then with the arms, I'm just kind of painting the hands, I'm not got loads and loads of paint on my paintbrush. I'm just kind of flicking over the darker brown that we've got underneath the beige brown, just so that it comes through. And if you can just see on that guy, you can just see a recess of the fingers. So I'll do the other guys in exactly the same manner. In fact, I'll do one more with you. So let's do the commander. So they have got really nice faces on when they stay in focus. So I don't think this is going to work because he's behind that guy. Let's try this. No, let's try that. So that looks a bit better from your point of view, not from mine because I can't tell what I'm doing now. But if I look away, we've got our face in there now. I think you can see. Compare that to the guys that haven't been done, and that's quite nice. That. So I'll come back when I've finished all the others. So there we go with the faces done, and just that one colour more to go. And this is Flat Flesh 70955, and I'm just going to use a tiny amount of this, and I've probably got 3,000 times more than I actually need there. And all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use this as a very, very tiny highlight on the flesh. Now, I don't know whether it will work on this level of magnification, but I'm just touching the nose, touching the cheek. Yeah, it's kind of not really, you can't really see, can you? So touch the nose, touch on the cheek. Yeah, we kind of just got that there. Same on the arms and the fingers. Just to give a little extra bit of highlight there. Let's try it again on this guy. A little bit further away. Try and focus it in. Get some paint on my paintbrush would be a start. So, a little dab on the end of the nose, little dab on the cheeks, dab on the chin, down the forearm, on the other elbow. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Happy with that. There is a considerably bigger contrast on this guy here in my human vision compared to this extra zoomed in. I suppose really when you're looking at stuff, a lot of people say, don't they, that the 3 foot rule. Well, I'm kind of 10 inches at times 15 magnification here, but there we go. So that basically is the figures finished, and then when you go in at this level of magnification, if you can see there, just on that guy, he's got a little bit of helmet. If you do that, you can't see it. But I'll just finish these other guys off with this tiny little highlight, which, although in real life it does make a massive difference, you can't really see on here. So I'll be back in a moment. So there we go. There's the figures painted, and reasonably happy with those. Nice basic paint job there. This video is running 24 minutes, and it's probably not taking me much longer than that. I generally paint, if you look in the background there, I've got another 8 figures there, so I probably paint these in batches of 12 or so. It just saves you using or allows you to use the batch process, saving time by not changing paints every 30 seconds. So I'm just going to use this quick shade strong tone quite sparingly. I do wince sometimes when people do lovely painted figures and then just proceed to completely cover the figure with some sort of wash. You notice I didn't do any shading whatsoever on the helmets, so the shading for these is going to come from the strong tone. I'm putting a reasonable amount on these. There is like a thin band around the helmets that's keeping the cover on them, and it's kind of this wash that is going to pick that out, and also dampen down the colour of those because they were quite bright. I'm not going to put any wash on the uniform, but I am going to put a little bit on the webbing that we've done, just to kind of increase that contrast between the dark and the light. And as you go down figure scales, the contrast becomes more important, because you are, although we were laughing a minute ago about the 3 foot rule, and a lot of my figures tend to be shown on social media at a lot closer than 3 foot. When you are looking for that overall look at a distance, contrast is very important, because the subtleties that you can see really close up on a good photograph are not that visible from distance. But if your contrast's right and your colours are right, then you're going to be there or thereabouts. So I think they're finished. A while back, I would have done a wash over the faces, but I've decided I'm currently going through a stage where I'm not washing faces, because I'm kind of quite liking this natural look, and the 3 colours that I'm using are giving me the effect that I want, and I'm happy with that. That's a good Wargames standard of unit. So I'll just very quickly talk about basing. I'm not going to go through the process with you. It's on some of my other videos how I do it, and I'll just show you very basically here, and then if you fancy doing some, you can go on to probably the Roman Allied Legion video is probably the best one for it, or the Carthaginian video in the last part 3. So I'll just get some stuff ready to show you, and then I'll be back in a second. So you can see here, here's our guys that we've painted up, and they're ready to be based. In true Blue Peter style, here's one I've done earlier, and exactly the same techniques, you can see. Bloody focus on this camera. So they're very nice, and all I've done is I've added a layer of plaster. There's plenty of different types around, but I've got this one, Polycell multi-purpose polyfiller. To be honest, the cheaper the polyfiller you get, the better, because it's usually more coarse grained, and when you're doing your kitchen, you want it to be fine. When you're doing Wargames figures, you want it to be quite rough. So that's the stuff that I've used, and all I've done is with a modelling knife, in fact this very one, I've just sculpted around the bases so that I've hidden, if we look at one that hasn't been painted, if we look at this guy, I'm just covering up those gaps between the figure base and the movement base, just to get a nice surface, so you can't tell where the figure bases are. Nice and rough, so it's going to be good for dry brushing, and ready to go on to the next stage. This is a completed base, and it's the one that we looked at the start. So I'll just move everything out of the way and just zoom in on that guy eventually. Oh dear. It's not happening, is it? So there we go. There's our completed base. It's under some quite heavy light there, so we're getting a lot of reflection from that, and very, very easy to do. We've seen how we've added in the polyfiller to get the base, and then I use this stuff, life colour, sand yellow, and I just slap all that on over the top of the plaster to get the sand colour. I then use this stuff, Iraqi sand 70819, as a very heavy dry brush to bring out some highlights. You can kind of see that down here. And then this stuff, the green, I don't use flock, oh my god, help, is this stuff, proper old school base text by Colour Party Paints, kind of a mucky limey green. Put some of that on in patches, add a dry brush of yellow, and then stick some grass tufts on. And the one thing you do need to do with these is to add in, or to paint, give them a matte varnish. So you can see, if you move the back one forward, you can see how shiny the helmets are. That's going to get me into trouble, isn't it? But then compare it to those, and the cloth covered, so they shouldn't be shiny. So a good covering of matte varnish will not only protect your figures, it'll also dampen down the effect of the ink. So there we go. That is my how-to guide for painting 15mm Israelis for Oil War Team Yankee. Hope that was of some use. Any questions, then put that in the questions below, or drop me an email to Yarkshire Gamer at gmail.com, and you can find me all over the place on Instagram, Twitter, and come listen to the podcast on Podbean if you've not heard it. Thanks again for listening. City.